My lab did a program called Desert Survivors where we interviewed people and then we asked fifth graders for questions, and it was went on Barstow TV and UNLV TV and things like this. And one of the most astounding things that we heard was as part of our activities, we had a beach ball with a bunch of questions on it. And one of the questions is, what is a desert? And one of the answers was, it's the place where all the dead plants are. And so this is from, a Las Vegas fifth grader. And it's kind of a telling statement that that there's an underappreciation of the biodiversity that we have in our own backyard.
Hi, I'm Earyn McGee. It might surprise you to find out that although Nevada is situated in the Mojave Desert, there is a lot of wildlife here. And when I say wildlife, I'm talking about both plants and animals. Even more surprising, over 200 of the species found in Nevada aren't found anywhere else in the world. Joining me today to discuss these wildlife species is Patrick Donnelly and Frank Van Breukelen. Patrick is the Nevada State Director for the Center of Biological Diversity. He works to defend wildlife and wild places of Nevada with a focus on carnivores and endemic species. Dr. Van Breukelen is a professor at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and is interested in studying the traits that allow animals to survive in harsh environments. When I think of endemic species, I think, wow, this animal literally can't be seen anywhere else on Earth. They're special to exist, and I'm honored to get to see them. So many people on Earth won't have that awesome opportunity. How can people in Nevada get out to see some of these amazing species?
One of my favorite places to send folks to see an endemic species is actually out at Corn Creek, which is the visitor center for Desert National Wildlife Refuge, northwest of Las Vegas. And there we will find a fish tank, which houses the Pahrump poolfish. And I think this is an interesting story because the Pahrump poolfish used to live in springs over in the Pahrump Valley, which were dried up due to groundwater pumping. And some intrepid biologists went out there with a bucket and saved those fish from going extinct.
What is the biggest threat currently facing endemic species in Nevada?
Really most significant driver of the extinction crisis among endemic species here in Nevada is habitat loss. And habitat loss can be, for instance, the Mount Charleston blue butterfly is losing habitat due to a proposed ski resort expansion. We've actually been working our way through litigating against that ski resort expansion, trying to make sure we save the Mount Charleston blue butterfly. Habitat loss can also result from, for instance, groundwater pumping. And this is a threat to many of the aquatic endemic species across the state where overuse of groundwater resources dries up springs, reducing the amount of habitat available for these species. So, between climate change and habitat loss, I like to say that Nevada is really the front lines of the extinction crisis.
Why should people in Nevada care about these endemic species?
We have a responsibility to be stewards of nature and to try to preserve what we can of it. And you never know when something really interesting is going to come out. These pupfish produce ethanol. Well, if they're producing alcohol, that means they're chronic alcoholics. So we might actually be able to get some insight into what life would be like in a natural setting as a chronic alcoholic. Right? And that's not something that you'd expect to get from a little fish, but it kind of shows you sort of what the diversity of life has in store for us. And that I think what we could challenge a whole bunch of biomedical problems by exploiting how nature went about and solved these problems in the first place.
Well, thank you both so much for joining us today and sharing your knowledge about endemic species here in Nevada. I've learned so much about the surprising amounts of wildlife and their origins, and I'm sure our viewers will too.